सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयम् नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम् सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरम् गोविन्दं परमानन्दम् सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम् Very good. It's the beginning of June. And we have, so we covered several verses last time, and we're continuing on the same topic. What's going on? Is it going to work? No. Yeah, they didn't fix it yet. Yeah, PC works, but DocCam does not. Yep. It's okay. We broke it last time. Okay, so where were we? If you want to help me remember where we were. That's the quiz. Where were we? We were on verse number 21, but what topic were we in? Sadhana Chatushtayam. That's right. We are in, or in this case, Sadhana Yatra Chatvari Kathitani Manishibhi Geshu Sat Sweva Sannishtha Yad Bhave Na Siddhayati. So we talked about, this was verse number 18 in your book. Verse number 18 in your book was talking about the fourfold sadhana. Is everything okay?
Yeah, so he said that I should. I mean, it's already there. The link is already on the.
Huh. Yeah. But the same link has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the class.
Right. So, what was the sadhana chatvari? Remember? Again, it's a quiz. Yes. What was number one? Okay. So you're going to make me write it on the board. I'm going to do it. So, okay, first of all, what is the subject matter that we are dealing with? The subject matter we are dealing with is, of course, we're dealing with our knowledge or self-knowledge. That's our subject matter. That's always been our subject matter, and that will continue to be our subject matter that we are working with. Correct? And in this case, in order to gain this knowledge, just like anything else, there is adhikaritva. So there is a preparation needed in order to gain this knowledge. Well, first of all, was our aim knowledge? Or what is the goal of this study? Yeah, that's very important.
True happiness.
Yes, it is. The goal of this is freedom or moksha. Freedom from what? Freedom from a sense of limitation. Because we are completely enmeshed in our understanding that we are limited by our body, limited by our mind, limited by our intellect, limited by our circumstances, limited by our karma, limited by our circumstances, our resources, our accomplishments. We find wherever you turn, you find yourself limited. And it would be okay if we were okay with this limitation. But somehow we're not okay with this limitation. And no matter how big I try to make myself, it's not big enough. Right? And so that sense of limitation, freedom from the sense of limitation, is our goal. Freedom from the sense of limitation was our goal. And if this was our goal, shouldn't we be looking for someone who can free us from this sense of limitation? That seems to come out of it directly, right? I'm looking for a freedom from a sense of limitation. But then, what is this sense of limitation? It's interesting, right? I used a peculiar word. It's a sense of limitation because most people have not concluded that they are limited yet. It's a subconscious conclusion. It's not a fully formed conclusion. It's not a sakar vritti yet.
Dissatisfaction.
It's a sense of dissatisfaction, but it's only a sense. If you walk up to them and ask them, they will tell you about the 10,000 things that they have done and that they feel that they have completed. But they will not talk about their sense of limitation because it's not well formed. It's just a sense. You know, like I have a sense for maybe it is about, like maybe after a few minutes of talking, you'll have a sense for how dark it is out there. You don't know how exactly dark it is out there, but you have a sense. There are no windows in this room. So you'll have a sense of what time it is. It's that kind of a sense of limitation that seems to be plaguing us. And this sense of limitation is actually centered on our understanding of ourselves. So we've never quite conducted a detailed inquiry into what is the true nature of myself. I mean, I have some ideas, I have some sense, but I haven't done a proper study where I would say, okay, this is my body, this is my mind, this is my intellect, these are my karmas, this is what I am bound by according to my DNA. I've not done a detailed study in order to understand the true nature of the human being. So this lack of understanding is centered on the self, and that's why knowledge of the self is what we're talking about, right? So it starts here. Our goal is we didn't want. Who wanted to study? Did you really want to study? You already studied all day, right? So Friday evening at 6 p.m. Did you tell, if you were to tell people, yeah, I've got another class at 6 p.m. They'll say, on Friday? You're going to study more? Are you okay? And you'll say, no, yes, I'm going to study about myself. They'll be like, wow. Not only are you, first they said, okay, you're crazy, you've got a class at 6 p.m. Then they'll say, what is the subject matter? The subject matter is yourself. Okay. They will say, all right, next time we don't talk to this guy. We won't ask them where he's going, right? So there is a subject matter. Nobody wanted to actually, self-knowledge was not originally the goal. The goal was always freedom from a sense of self, a better understanding of who I truly am. And I found that this seems to be centered on my lack of understanding of myself, thus making the self understanding of Atma, understanding of the self, the subject matter of the study. As soon as I stepped into the world of studying, the prerequisites showed up. Because I said, I want to study, I want to understand about myself, I want to analyze myself. More than that, I want to experiment on myself. I want to understand myself. Do I have, okay, if you want to study something, it should be with you, right? You should have the thing that you want to study. Do you have yourself? Well, yeah, it's imminently here. So definitely my subject matter is also right here, which I wish to analyze, which I wish to look upon. So I have myself right here. So where did this adhikari come about? And so in order to gain this knowledge, we realize that we have some preparation, some prerequisites that need to be available. And so the Shastra says, okay, I'll give you that there are fourfold sadhanas that you need to do in order to be an adhikari. What is sadhana? Sadhana is practice. Practice, sadhana is always associated with the sadhya. If you want to run faster than, how many miles per hour do you run? 5, maybe 6, right? Maybe more than that, I don't know. But if you want to go faster, your sadhana will be to go out and run every day to increase your stamina, increase your speed. The sadhana and the sadhya go hand in hand. If sadhana is being meant as an adhikaritvam for the sake of self-knowledge, then it will be associated with that sort of topic. And that's why the sadhana is not, okay, so you sit down and you sing the ragas every morning. If you do that, your sadhya is not self-knowledge. Your sadhya in that case is being able to sing in the proper raga. So the sadhana has to go hand in hand with the sadhya. So in order to get the adhikaritvam, sadhana itself, there's a fourfold preparation, and we looked at them last time. There were one, it was nitya, anitya, vastu, viveka. Number 2 was iham, utrartha, phal bhog, virataha. Number 3 was sham adi, shatak shampatihi. And then what was the fourth one? Mumuksha. Hey, interesting, huh? The fourth one is where it all started. The whole discussion started right there.
It's like a cycle.
It is. It's making, or if you could say, it's closing the loop. It's
Yeah.
making sure that
Feedback
everything
loop
is
kind of.
self-contained. Then we talked a little bit about nitya anitya vastu viveka last time, right? What is nitya anitya vastu viveka? It is an understanding of what is changing and what is unchanging. And what we also realized is that we actually don't know nitya vastu yet. Right now, I only know the anitya vastu. So I can talk about whether something is time bound or not. And if you look at it from that perspective, just about everything is time bound. So it almost seems that there is no nitya vastu, but then that is our subject matter. We're going to look into it in a little more detail. So nitya nitya vastu viveka. So we had arrived at this point. This was verse number 19 was Adav Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha Pariganyate. Yeah, that's where it pointed out these 4. And then we looked briefly at verse number 20. We actually didn't officially look at verse number 20. So let's take a look at it right now. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Ityevam Rupo Vinishchayah Ityevam Rupo Vinishchayah So Ayam Nitya Nitya Vastu So Ayam Nitya Vastu Vivekah Samudahritah Vivekah Samudahritah. So this is verse number 20. And in verse number 20, so all the verses will now talk about these sadhanas in more detail. And of course, I remember I told you that number 3 already has 6 in it. So we will look at those 6 in more detail. But there'll be one verse dedicated to each of them. So in this case, we're talking about Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. And what does it say? It says, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Rupo Vinishchaya. Clear understanding that Brahman is the Satyam and Jagat is Mithya, which actually led us to our discussion of what is Mithya last time. Luckily, we have already studied the Tattva Bodha, so Mithya has been predefined. What is Mithya? Mithya is that. So if I wanted to continue with my topic of Mithya Nitya Vastu Viveka, I would say Mithya, something that depends upon something else for its definition, for its existence, for it to be objectified, that is Mithya. Something that depends upon something else, for it to be revealed, for it to be objectified, for it to be properly defined, is Mithya. Mithya is not an illusion, right? Mithya, the way we are defining is it depends upon something else. It is not self-revealing. And it says Brahman is Satya and Jagat is Mithya. This understanding is Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. Now, of course, this is pretty much the subject matter of that we are going to be talking about. So we're going to spend more time looking at this for the rest of the text. But at least we've encountered that we're on the right track. It says Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka is that. Then the next one was, we talked a little bit about Iham Uttrartha Phala Bhoga Viraga. What was the context? The context was Vairagya. And we had a really nice discussion about Vairagyam last time as well. We had a good discussion about Mithya and we had a good discussion about Vairagyam. So for Vairagyam was verse number 21. We didn't officially look at 21, we just discussed it. So verse number 21 says, Tadvairagyam jihasaya, Tadvairagyam jihasaya, Darshan Shravanadibihi, Darshan Shravanaadibihi, Dehadi Brahma Paryante, Dehadi Brahma Paryante, Hya Nitye Bhoga Vastuni, Hya Nitye Bhoga Vastuni. So official definition of Vairagyam. What does it say? Tad Vairagyam Jihasa. Jihasa means what? In the Jihasa means the desire to give up. Desire to give up what? Darshana Shravana Adibihi. That which is seen, that which is heard, or objects of the senses. Dehadi Brahma Paryante. Starting from this body to the body of Brahmaji. You know, we can have different types of bodies, different types of jivas. Remember, Iham Uttrat. So it's talking not only about our life here, but our life beyond that as well. If you believe in that sort of thing. Right? If you believe in that sort of
lower
thing.
planes of existence.
Including the lower and the higher planes of existence. Iham Uttratha Phala Bhoga Viraga. It's talking about here and hereafter. Yes. No, nothing. Tad Vairagyam Jihasa Ya Darshan Shravana Adibhi Deh Adi Brahma Paryante. All the way up to Brahmaji. Not only bodies in this life, but bodies all the way up to Brahmaji. Very interesting. Anitya Bhoga Vastuni. So, an understanding that all of these objects and all of these experiences are anitya and they are just Bhoga Vastus. That understanding is Vairagya. Does that make sense to you? A little bit.
The last part.
Yeah.
Bhoga Vastuni. Vairagya is a mental character where the absence of objects are Bhoga Vastuni. All the objects of your senses are Bhoga Vastuni. What does that mean? Bhoga is
Karma.
it's objectified. Bhoga Vastuni is objectified. So, put it differently. Anything that is objectified by your senses, in the process of objectification, it becomes a vastu that has been bhoga.
Like fruits of our labor are for bhog thing.
Are for bhoga, but look at it a little, so the meaning is a little more subtle than that. In reference to the context of this verse, what it is saying is that every object of your sense is a bhoga vastu. So when you experience that object, it is a bhoga vastu. So if you imagine yourself with sensors, it is a object that provides a stimulus to the senses. So the sensor experiences that stimulus. So the sensor is responding to the presence of that stimulus and therefore it has become a bhog vastu. It is, so for example, if your eyes are closed and I wave an apple in front of you, it is meaningless because it is not an object of your sensor. The sensor is not available. It's not looking at the apple. So no matter how much, you may be able to say, I smell an apple, but that was not my intention. I'll wave it from far so that you can't smell it. It's not a bhog vastuni yet because the sensor has not yet been
appear in my mind.
It has not yet appeared in your mind.
So something that materializes in my mind is bhog vastuni.
Is a bhog vastuni, it becomes an object, right? It has been objectified. So it's saying that all the types of objects that are objectified by the various senses that belong to the various bodies, whether it is the body of a human being and all the way up to the body of Brahmaji, all objects that are experienced and objectified by the senses belonging to that particular body are anitya. Which means that they are time-bound. Any stimulus to a sensor is going to be time-bound. Is that fair enough? What is the definition of a sensor? Definition of a sensor is that it gets disturbed. Provided a stimulus, it will give you a response. Now, there are differential sensors and then there are non-differential sensors, right? Differential sensor will tell you plus and minus both, right? It will tell you, okay, it's plus 5 volts and it will measure minus 5 volts also. But a non-differential sensor can only tell you 0 to 5 volts, and then if it goes on the negative, it keeps reporting 0, right? It's a unidirectional sensor. It doesn't report in both directions. It's not a differential sensor. It's interesting the mind is a differential sensor, right? Because it can report the positive and the negative as well. When you are happy, it will report happiness. When you are sad, it will report sadness. When you are tired, it will report tiredness. When you are alert, it will report alertness. But the funny thing about a differential sensor is that you always need to define the baseline because it vibrates about it. It will go about it. It will say, okay, this is plus and this is minus. The funny thing about that is that I can shift the baseline to anywhere I want. The sensor only works as a differential because it zeroes out whatever is the baseline.
So we can make it act like a non-differential sensor.
You could if you wanted to. But what I'm trying to make the case here is that you must understand that I can define the baseline any way I want. And that baseline always becomes irrelevant. What that really means is, in a state of happiness, if your happiness is permanent, the sensor will damp it out.
Yeah.
And it will only measure your happiness and sadness from that 0 point, where you're already sitting, which is very interesting because you can now appreciate how a wealthy person can be unhappy and a poor person can be happy.
Relative.
Because the sensor works only in the relative sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, if we get something new,
Yes.
it's just excited for a few days, and
Yes.
after that, without it, it's difficult.
Yes.
So, getting a bike from
Yes.
motorbike from a cycle is exciting for a few days, but then after that, without motorbike, it's difficult.
Correct. And then if you lose that motorbike, then you're sad for a few days, and then you're okay. It's very interesting that the Sanskrit word for the mind and for is antakaranam, right? So the jiva is blessed with an inner instrument. That antakaranam includes all the senses. It includes the mind. It includes the intelligence. In fact, the entire sky of what you experience is referred to as the antakaranam, the inner instrument. It has been recognized as an instrument way back, long time back, because it has to be. That's how I'm being able to see, I'm being able to hear. And what Vairagyam is saying, Vairagyam is saying that all of these, the desire to give up and understand the understanding that it is anitya and hence not that important, or you could say that it is definitely not a nitya vastu. Right? Vairagyam connects itself to the one above by saying, it's not the nitya vastu. It is not the one that is going to free me from the sense of limitation. How can it? It is a limited experience by definition. Right? Whichever sensor you use, no matter how advanced it is, will only respond to the stimulus as long as the stimulus is there. As soon as the stimulation is gone, the sensor will stop responding. It is a limited phenomenon. If my original emphasis was freedom from the sense of limitations, definitely a life of experiences is not the way to get there. A life of experiences.
What do you mean by experiences here?
Everything. Experience hunter. So a person who becomes an experience hunter, who says, I really like this idea that my sensor responds to new things. But the problem with my sensor is it damps them out after a little while. So I need to keep escalating my experience. Every time I need to jump to a higher orbit because I want to enjoy that same rush, that same thrill that I got from the first dose. You know where I'm going. I want from the next dose, so the next dose has got to be higher. And it has got to be higher, and it has got to be higher, and it has got to be higher. And then I'll be looking for it, right? I'll become a thrill seeker, an adventure seeker, you could say, or somebody who's an experience hunter. Okay, that's fine. That's fine if you have not understood yet that you are looking for a freedom from sense of limitation. That's fine. If you're not yet arrived at a point where you understand that no matter what I do, the experience is limited. It's great, but it's limited.
It's also like this is true even with say professional success or anything.
Sure, absolutely.
The person who gets like 15th rank in his class, once he gets 8th rank, he's very happy.
Okay.
But then after that, second time the 8th is never.
It's never good enough.
So it's always grading. Like, and then the second question which I'm having, this might digress a little bit, but I think that's more important for practical life, so I'm going to ask that. So we also experience company of humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's also an experience.
Absolutely.
And I have noticed this with myself, with some others, I've seen that. Very few people can have fun with their company for very long. After a certain time, they're okay. They're just like or if you have some bad impression of someone when you spend some time with them, then it normalizes. And for the other way around also. So then, what is the way that you can have good experience of a particular person or someone's company for a very long period? Like, how can a company be sustainable? What can be there so that a relationship can be sustainable?
I can answer in your analogy. Why is the second 8th rank not as good as the first? Is your question in some sense?
No, that was a different one. This is
no, I'm answering in your analogy.
Okay.
Your question translates to analogy in the sense that how can I ensure that my second 8th rank is as good as my first 8th rank?
Sure. Okay.
Understanding 8th rank is not important. That is our goal. Once we realize that the high is not important, then the first 8th rank, second 8th rank, every 8th rank.
That's different. I'm saying like now we are.
No, I will tell you. Okay, now coming back to what you asked, you decided that how can I have fun with a person for a long time? You put the baseline on what is fun, right? If you put the baseline of what is fun, if you don't put that as the baseline of what is fun, then you will have fun every time.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's the thing. You're trying to say that
he's answered your question, and I'll answer it a slightly different way. The question is very interesting, but it actually does digress quite a bit from our subject matter. But the question is not something that I would say is not relevant or not important. It's actually a very important question because it's a question about relationships. Yeah. It's a question about
the reasons why divorce happens.
And he actually didn't go there. He actually just talked about friends, about people that I spend time with.
He's in marriage.
Okay.
No, this is the common.
So there is a very famous book by. So there are many. There are many people who have reflected upon it. Since the subject matter of this question is not Atma, but is Anatma or something beyond, something other than Atma. That's fine. But it has been reflected upon by many. And some years ago, when I was a student like you, I particularly enjoyed reading Plato and Aristotle. They were very interesting to me. I did read through some of them. Eventually, they get dry and boring even for me, and I let it go. But there was a book called Nicomachean. I don't know how to pronounce it because it's a different language than mine. It's called Nicomachean or Nicomachean Ethics. And in that, there's a whole section dedicated to friendships. And it talks about what is friendship, When can it happen? And when can it be sustained? And what causes it to digress? What causes it to come back? It's an interesting discussion. It's a philosophical discussion. And it's very interesting that Plato considered it a subject matter large enough that perhaps 1/6 of the book is dedicated to the discussion, because he talks about society, he talks about community, he talks about how do you go about building a republic. Of course, that was the subject matter of what Plato did, but a republic cannot occur without relationships between the people, so it talks about friendships. And to cut a long story short, at the end of it, he concludes that the longest friendships will be when you have shared values. And I've added a little bit of Vedanta to it. So he concludes that the best friendships are the ones that are based when you believe in the same thing. And I'm going to change that around and say that best friendships, the longest lasting friendships, will be when you have shared values.
So when a friend becomes a comrade,
Or shared values is an interesting thing,
There's no
because
conflict of views or
What you're
something
trying
like
to say,
that.
Professor, I agree with Shivram, what he was trying to say. So, because when you have shared value, it becomes easy to bring that baseline very low. It's because then this common shared value is one thing which one human, as in not talking about the spiritual way, but just in the general person, will always be associated with that. And the other person will always be thinking about that common value. Like, all other fun things can go and above with change, lifestyle or age and other things, but this common value, the common thought process, might base of it will remain the same and it will evolve. So this might be the reason why you're saying that it helps to bring the baseline down. And just the
baseline down or up
and I mean to
match it.
move it, to match it, or
to match.
to always bring it somewhere where you can still have something still going on over it.
No.
But here also I want to bring one thing
Yeah.
before you answer this. So here you have answered it this way. And now when you read about Chanakya, so he says there cannot be a friendship without need or I don't remember the exact word, but it kind of tries to say that you need to have some transaction.
Chanakya is not a spiritualist, first of all.
Yeah. So, but this is like in the life domain, in general, the practical life. So he says there should be some transaction, then only a friendship can sustain.
He was a very competitive man, so don't talk about it, so he's not a spiritualist at all. He wasn't aiming for
Yeah, exactly. His words are more towards political
competition,
state,
politics,
and
yeah,
the
war.
general practical life. It's not.
I won't say it's practical life. It's like competition, competitive life.
Not only competition.
Yeah.
We can debate on that later. So, well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Shared goals is one thing, shared values is something else. I can have a shared goal, and that goal may not be in keeping with.
So are you talking about morals?
I'm going to talk about it in a moment. Shared goals are not the same as shared values.
Shared goals, when we are saying shared goals can have sustained partnership but not sustained friendship. For friendship, you need shared values.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
No. You must understand that shared goals are not necessarily aligned with dharma.
Yeah, morals.
You can have shared goals that are not aligned with dharma. And as long as your goals are shared and you're working towards it, there will be a sustained partnership.
Yeah.
So it's like enemy
But
of the enemy is a
friendship, you
friend.
need values.
Well, then there is no purpose for friendship if there is no goal. Fair enough. If there is no need for friendship, if there is no goal to work on it together. But in the Vedantic context, a sustained friendship will be one where the shared goal is Atma-Vichara. Then you will have a sustained friendship where it will be irrelevant what the ups and downs of them are, because your shared goal is Atma-Vichara. Makes it a little bit different. So there is shared values. For example, you may have a shared value that you want to do dharmic actions together. Fair enough. But the purpose of the dharmic action is what? Is to develop iham uttartha phal bhoga viraga. That's the purpose of any dharmic action, is to develop a sense of a sense of karma yoga, a sense of understanding that I am sacrificing my time and effort in order to help society, and at the same time, I am becoming free from my own ragas and dveshas. The purpose of any activity that benefits society and the community is to develop a sense of emotional and spiritual maturity for yourself while doing something good for society. that is a shared value. That is a shared friendship. That is something that can be sustainable. It has a shared goal as well as a shared value. There are other shared goals for which you can have partnerships, but those are more for other purposes than what we're talking about. But yeah, we have digressed way past. I managed to bring it back a little bit by saying it's Atma Vichara. I can always bring it back by talking about the fact.
One question
Yeah.
on this topic. I mean, not the topic that we had.
Yeah.
So if I say that if I do good karma, then I'll get good results either in this part or next part. So is my desire to get good results, good rewards out of my karma is a bhog vastu? I mean,
No.
that's not.
No. You must. So, Bhog Vasuni is being defined as an object that can be objectified. That's a definition of a term. So, what you're saying is it bad for me to pursue actions that will give me results that I really want? And the answer to that is no. The issue will be if you think that that result will be nitya.
Okay.
If you understand that that result is also going to be time bound, anitya, and it will not get rid of your sense of limitation, then you understand it for what it is. Remember, the perspective is important. Putting it in proper context is very important. Yes, I can wish to have the desire for something that is a vilasavastu, something that is meant for luxury. What is meant for luxury? There's so many luxurious items out there. Pick one. Fancy car. I can have a desire for the fanciest car in the world. And no matter how fancy it is limited. In the sense that there will always be a fancier car. If not here yet, it will come out next year. It will be in next year's model. So when next year's model comes out, what am I supposed to do with my fancy car? I'd better go into the business of car making so that I always have the fanciest car, right? But in that case, what will I do about my competitor's fancy car who's made it? It never ends. Because it's a nitya, it's not an object that can ever satisfy my sense of limitation. And as long as you understand and put it in perspective that, oh, finally, it is a fancy car. There's nothing wrong in having a fancy car. As long as you understand that it's just a fancy car. It cannot make me understand. It doesn't help me conduct Atma Vichara. Unless you are sitting in it and you're playing a video cassette or an audio cassette where they're talking about Atma, it's helping you doing Atma Vichara. But then I must tell you, don't drive. That may not be a good combination for you to do Atma Vichara while you're driving. You may lead yourself into. The Atma will be like, okay, come. Yeah, don't do that. So you can use it, of course, as everything can be, of course, used for Atma Vichara. But I don't want you to vilify your own desires and passions and your ragas and dveshas, but you want to understand them and put them in proper perspective. And the proper perspective is that they are limited objects that I can enjoy for a period of time using my senses. And in fact, not only here, but hereafter, you can evolve me all the way up to the status of Brahmaji. And I will have all kinds of sensors, but these objects will continue to remain anitya. Yeah.
So is it like if I like keep existing in this mortal plane, then I'll always suffer? I mean, like
that's an interesting thought about suffering, right? We're actually going to talk about it because we're going to talk a little bit. Where will it come from? Titiksha. We'll talk about it a little
the thing
bit.
is that what is the nature of this true permanent happiness, like which we were talking about, which
It's a
we
great
will get to
question.
know by self-knowledge?
Yes. What is the
How do I
nature?
simulate it in my mind so that I can work towards it? You know, like
That's a fair
how do I
question.
motivate myself for it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we say that Atma, the nature of Atma is Satchidananda, or you can say that it is Satchidananda Atma. What is Ananda? That's the question that you're
Enjoyment,
asking.
yeah. So what's the
What
nature
is
of that enjoyment?
we've said that it is bliss.
Yeah.
It is everlasting. What is the nature
I've
of
never experienced
everlasting?
it, so I cannot.
Correct.
I mean, I don't know how to get motivated.
Correct. And the thing is, the question actually contains the answer in this case. Because if it's an experience, then it falls within the realm of experience.
Yeah.
And it
Anitya.
it will definitely be time bound because there will be a graph that goes up, and what goes up must come down, and I'll be back to
So that means it is already there, but
See, so the question is, when you are, I'll put it differently. When are you most happy? Maybe I'll give you a different answer. I'll give you a question. When are you most relaxed? Yeah? Or if you've just woken up and all the details of your, not after a nightmare, then, then you're very worried when you woke up. But if you have had a really good night's sleep, and while you were asleep, and you just the instant you've woken up, none of the other things have yet come
When
back
I
to you.
didn't care about anything at all.
To a
There
certain
wasn't
extent.
anything in my mind.
It was not bothering you. The objects
Yeah.
can continue to be there, but they will not be a source of frustration. They will no longer. Why? Because you recognize their place in the perspective of life. They will again stop bothering you. The only reason they're bothering you, all the objects and all the situations and all the events are bothering you because it is based on your subjective contribution to those individual items, objects, and situations. An understanding of what an object is, how you are aware of it, what is its existence made up of. So I am faced with a really complex situation, and I of course need to first work towards solving it. But let's say that I have figured out a way to solve it, and then I'm sitting down and I'm looking at this situation. I got to understand, what is it made up of? And it seems to be made up of perceptions, thoughts, and emotions of which I am aware of at that instant when I was facing the problem, and I'm aware of it while I'm solving the problem, and I'm aware of it when it's gone and I have solved the problem.
Professor, I have a shortcut to get this kind of true happiness. Just get ganja and stuff, like.
But that's
Yeah.
an experience. That's an
But
experience.
still, I can make it look like permanent,
So,
eventually, I'll go to coma or something, but that will be kind of so. The thing is that it will be permanent for me, and
But
so
how
you get
do
what I'm saying.
How do you know that the kind of happiness that you will get from
Yeah,
ganja
again,
is
it's
the
your
same happiness?
baseline will be-
We anyway don't know
No, but
that
you
happiness we are
always
hunting.
need more, right? Your baseline will be sometimes like after 10 puffs, you are just like, okay, I can do anything. I can write 10,000 lines of code now.
No,
So
so
it's
saying,
like your baseline
I
will
will
keep
go to local maxima and kill myself. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
so maximum
Yeah, sort
will
of.
keep
Yeah.
increasing. That will keep
I mean,
So
right,
you-
of course,
you have
if you, the original question is the most important. The person who's asking this question is someone who has arrived at an understanding that human and life experiences seem to be limited, and I have a sense of limitation. Even
Yeah.
when you are under a state of drug-induced whatever ecstasy or whatever, not that we want to talk about it, but whatever you are at, even that sense
Psychedelic,
is limited.
stuff. Yeah.
Even that is limited. That experience, while you may say that this experience is exhilarating, it does not get rid of your sense of limitation. And if I were to ask you, hey, are you happy? You'll say, I'm having a great time, but I still have a sense of limitation. And if I took more of this, maybe I'll experience more. The sense of limitation, can I have more of this?
Dependent.
It's still dependent on external
Yeah.
circumstances. Anything that depends upon external circumstances is first of all mithya, and anything that is time bound and it changes is going to be mithya as well. And so the question becomes, what is this satyam? The thing is, satyam will never be an experience. It will never appear as an object that you will say, this I have enjoyed, and this is the true nature of bliss. It will never be that.
So how do we interact with that?
It's a fair enough question, right? So every time in this discussion, there is an individual you who's trying to grasp onto something. Correct? The mode of investigation right now is I'm here and I'm looking for something that I can hold on to that will give me this experience of Atma. The problem with this is the 10th boy's story, which means that it's actually none of those things. It's actually the person who's doing the grasping. The person who's reaching out is the one that we're talking about, is the subject matter of this. That person has never been investigated. That person has never been looked at, or vichara of Atma has not been conducted. We're constantly looking for objects and experiences, thought patterns and concepts. But it's really the subject who's searching for all of this is the one that this is talking about. And that subject, by definition, will never become an object, but it is always known to you as the subject. And since it has not ever been explored properly, it's like, what is it?
But Professor, I feel like it's a limitation that I can never really explore myself. I mean, because how can me myself being the object? I mean, the subject, like objectify myself and
You will never so that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? Every object that you get to know is revealed. Fair enough. Without being revealed, you will never know what it is. What does that mean? It means that the object has to enter your antakarana. It has to, through whatever stimulus. It may be an imaginary object, in which case there is no physical correlation to it, but it's an object in your mind and you are perceiving it. It has to be revealed in the sense that it has to make an appearance in your antakarana. It has to be absorbed by your buddhi, and therefore it will be revealed. But in all of these objects, there is one that never needs to be revealed. And it is always there. And it is never seen. And it is always seen. That subject matter, the one that doesn't need to be revealed, is the one that is Satyam. Now you say, is there such a thing? Is there such a thing that I never need to reveal? And the answer is yes. It's actually you. You yourself is the one. I never have to ask you, hey, oh, not even me. You never have to ask yourself, am I here? You're here. What is that nature of that you are here? The one that says, it doesn't even say anything. It just says, I'm here. Doesn't even need the words. The distance between it being revealed is zero, because it is the one self-revealing subject. Okay. That self-revealing subject, which is never revealed, will never become an experience, will never become an object of your antakarana. What is its nature?
Yeah, how do I know that if I cannot really study it
True,
directly?
with the fact that it is self-revealing. It has already revealed itself to you, you just haven't grasped it yet. Or you haven't yet removed the incorrect notions about it yet. That's the thing, right? It's self-revealing. There is no other person. So now if you are talking about the awake jiva, to the awake jiva in the antakarana, there is an ahankara. That ahankara is momentary. Ahankara is anitya. This is very beautiful. Because you got to understand, what does it mean to have an antakarana? We've talked about this before. We have a whole model of the antakarana. We've talked about manas, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara. Ahankara is the one that says, I am. It's the one that appears in the antakarana and says, I am this. It actually does nothing else. It can't think because the buddhi thinks. It can't feel because the mind feels. It can't remember because it's stored in the chitta. But it's the one that stands up and says, this is all mine. It's the one that says, this is all mine. It's the one. It's literally referred to. Now imagine that if it wasn't there, the human being would be broken in the sense that the human being would not function.
Yeah, we wouldn't see ourselves as individual people.
Oh, no, the object wouldn't function. Because in order to find food, you have to say, I'm hungry. And I need to find food. And then it decides by the buddhi, it needs to go. It literally is the ahankara, the I maker. But the funny thing is, when you are enjoying this really good food, and you're tasting this food that your mom has cooked, and it tastes really good, you're saying, this is amazing. At that instant in time, where did it go? It disappeared, but the experience was there. The experiencing of tasting. You've almost forgotten who you were. The food was so good. You know, the phrase goes, I've forgotten who I am. This food was so good, I was transported to a parallel universe where my mom had cooked all this food for me and I was eating it and I was enjoying it. At that time, the ahankara calls me. Hey, if that thing is coming and going, then it's not a nitya vastu. It's an anitya vastu, which means that it is mithya. If it is mithya, then you tell me who perceived who? The satyam is the one that is present forever and ever. It's blessing this experience as it is happening. The ahankara needs to understand that it is mithya. That much is Vedanta. that Brahman doesn't need to know that it is Satyam, it already is Satyam. Hankara needs to understand that it is Mithya. And what is here is self-revealed. The nature of Brahman is not contained within the vessel of one jiva. It is the one that transcends space and transcends time and transcends experiences because it is the one who's always here. And you ask me, is it Anandam? I can tell you it is Anantam. It is Anantam that cannot be experienced because there is no such thing as experiencing Anantam.
Professor, like you're also being worked by Brahman, right?
Yes.
Like, and I'm
Sure.
also being worked
Absolutely.
by Brahman. Then why can't I like study your side of the Brahman and understand?
So it's very interesting analogy that the ancient rishis have given. It's like the pot, right? So you're a pot, and I'm a pot. I'm a bigger pot. You're a smaller pot, right? I've got a bigger pot belly, so I'm a bigger pot, right? The space in your pot wants to experience the space in my pot. Yeah? Does that make any sense to you? Or even better, your pot is saying, no, I want to be the space inside your pot. I say, move the pot. Huh? There is no such thing because the orders of reality, the dimensions of reality are collapsing. From the perspective of the pot, it thinks that there is space, there is different space inside that pot. And I'm saying, whew, the pot has not understood the dimension of reality.
Pot and just get added into your space. Yeah.
and if you ask space will say, there is a pot somewhere. Where is it? Because inside the pot, there is only space. Huh? No, wait a minute. The pot itself is made up of space because clay particles are 99.999999% space. And mass is a concept in space-time continuum. So space will say, there is a pot, there is something called a pot, I'd like to meet it. Bring me this pot, I want to see it. Also, I can't bring it to you, you're already in it. So from that perspective, the orders of reality need to be understood there, right? So now, where were we? We've gone on so many tangents.
Actually, it feels like life and death are so inseparable but so far apart. It's sort of similar to that, you know.
And so inseparable, but it's so far apart. Yeah, it's a nice way to put it. Okay, good. We can get back to our verses. We had a great discussion, though. I like it a lot.
Professor,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like this question comes from being a father kind of thing. So, yeah. Like, as you discussed, like, I mean, I think the part of the reason that we are all here is that we have experienced many things. So, and we have found that these are like limited. So, like the question of we want freedom from this limitation of and like this, like vairagam and all these things makes sort of like sense for us. Yeah, but like being a father, so what is the best way? Like, should I let my kid like experience out like the life for some time, and then should introduce this thing, or like the kid should find out itself, or should we introduce like, oh, okay, like you see, I mean, like whatever the kid does, okay, do you see there is some limitation going on, or like we should put these things in perspective, or should we like guide the kid in that way? In the sense, okay, let's say like the kid says this one, I'm feeling very hungry, and I should say, okay, like let me give you food. But do you realize like you're saying I and this is this one, and slowly introduce this thing in.
So what a beautiful question, and one that I've thought about for years. What a beautiful question. The answer, of course, is simple and complicated at the same time. One answer I will give you from Chandogya Upanishad, which is the story of Uddalak and Shwetaketu. Right? Shwetaketu and Uddalak appear in one of the Upanishads. Forget. All of a sudden, I forget the name of the Upanishad, but they appear. They're the main central characters of one Upanishad. And then I'll give you one from my own life. The first answer is more Vedantic, so it's more traditional, and that will help. So the story goes, Uddalak is a rishi. And when we use the word rishi, it means seer, somebody who sees. Sees what? Sees the truth, sees their difference. You could say a seer is someone who's with Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka, sees what is the difference between Nitya and Anitya Vastu. So Uddalak in this story is a rishi, somebody who's a Brahmagyan. And he has a brilliant son. And because it's a story, the son's name is Shvetketu, which means white lightning. Right? So white lightning. He's so brilliant that he has been named Shvetketu in the story. He's supremely brilliant. And Uddalak is as the story continues, you'll realize what kind of man he is. So Shvetketu is a supremely intelligent child. And the story actually appears when Shvetketu completes his education and returns back home. So he has gone off, in the ancient times, the story goes that you go into the forest and you live with your teacher. And so Shvetketu comes back from completing his life as a student, and he's having a conversation with Uddalak. And I guess Uddalak reads into Shvetketu's body language and his words and so on that he is a little full of it because he knows a lot. He's a brilliant student and he studied just about everything. So he's having a conversation with Shvetketu. He asks him, "Hey Shvetketu, have you studied about that by knowing which everything else becomes as though known?" Shvetketu says, "Excuse me?" He says, "Have you read about that by knowing which everything as though becomes known?" Shvetketu says, I'm obviously a prodigy. I'm supremely intelligent. And obviously, my father is not an ordinary man either. But what kind of question is he asking me? He's asking me a question which I can't seem to understand. Have you learned about that by knowing which everything else becomes as the known? And Shvetketu says, "Sorry, I have not come across. Is there something that by knowing which everything becomes as though known?" And of course, then begins the Upanishad. Then Uddalak teaches, and of course, the famous songs Tattvamasi Shvetketu continues. So Tattvamasi actually comes from that Upanishad where Uddalaka is telling Shvetketu about Atma. But what happened in that situation? He was a grown-up man. He was a brilliant child. He was educated. He was given all the opportunities of the world to study. It was not until he asked that the father felt that he was ready and that he was perhaps going astray, that he said, I need to stop you and ask you a question that you think you should know the answer of, and I think you should know the answer of, but somehow you don't seem to know it." And interrupts and asks the question. Another story is one of two friends, one who is supreme Brahmagani, and the other who's not. Let's just put it that way. And they've been friends for 40 years or more, depending on how you age them. And the friend has asked the Brahmagani many times for advice on how to do this or how to do that or how to acquire this or acquire that. And he's always given him advice. But he's never taught him Brahmagyan until his friend asks him, "Hey, I know you know, and I'm faced with a situation for which I just can't seem to think my way out of it. Would you please share your knowledge with me so that I would understand it?" And then, of course, the Brahmagani sings the Bhagavad Gita, which is the story of Krishna and Arjuna, obviously. Friends for how many years? And Krishna never, there was so much time to teach him the Bhagavad Gita, right? But he didn't until the time was right. And Arjuna asked the question and said, I really wish to study it. Please tell it. And then I'll give you. So both of these answers can seem theoretical because they are based on ancient times. In present day times, I can certainly tell you that what you're thinking is very much in lines with what I was thinking. But human beings are very interesting characters. And I have my own children, and you can try to instruct them, and sometimes they learn, and sometimes they don't. But the one thing that is unique about them is that they do remember. They remember. Particularly with children as they grow up, you'll realize that the person that they ignore the most is usually their parents. And the person that they actually listen to the most is also their parents. It's one of those things about they like to ignore you in front of you, and then when your back is turned, they're thinking about what you said, which is very interesting because it'll look like they're not listening to you. But then you walk away and they're always thinking about it. They're always thinking about what was it that they said? What does it mean? In fact, if you look at your own experiences, you will find yourself, you'll catch yourself doing the same thing. In fact, sometimes people say that you tend to become a lot like your parents. How does that happen? How does that happen that the child matures into very similar, not identical, of course, but has some very similar? It's because we're constantly reflecting upon that. It's very interesting. The relationship between a child and a parent is so deep. It's actually deeper from the child's perspective than from the parent sometimes, particularly when this sort of knowledge has been imparted, and there's no harm in continuing to talk about it. And you'll get this sometimes. My kids, when they were little, maybe 5, 7 years old, they would say to me, "I don't know, Dad, is it Brahman? Because everything's Brahman." If you ask them something, my daughter will tell you, "I don't know, is it Brahman? Everything's Brahman, right?" so they do that to you.
Shortcut answer.
They'll say,
Default placeholder.
huh?
Default placeholder.
Yeah, it's like, isn't it like, isn't everything Brahman? That's what you teach, right? So everything must be
There's a
Brahman.
simple answer to every
This is
question.
the answer to everything. So kids do that. They don't. There is no wrong way to instill values. Perhaps the most important thing for us as parents to do is to give them shared values. Shared values that are appropriate for the shared goals. And the values itself are very simple: Shama, Dama, Uparati, Titiksha, Shraddha, and Samadhana. That's the Sham Adi Shatak Sampatti. I brought it back. I can always bring it back because Vedanta always allows you to do that. But shared values are very important.
And also dharma. Teach them
Dharma is the shared goal. Dharma, moksha comes a little bit later. For in order to get to moksha, they will get there themselves. They will themselves ask the
the
question.
last thing in the dharma artha kam moksha.
Yeah, and they'll get there themselves. Life is defined. Human existence is such that everybody gets there. They get there at their own pace. In the meantime, instilling shared values, instilling shared goals, instilling the understanding of dharma are all very important. And you continue to do that. That's what your job is as a parent. The third sadhana is Sham Adi Shatak Sampatti. And the 6 are, I'm out of time, but at least I got to make some progress. Otherwise, it'll look like I got nothing done. And then, evaluations will be very bad. He digresses and he doesn't cover the subject matter. So the Sham Adi Shatak Sampatti, these wealths are, maybe I'll write 50. A is Shama, B is Dama, C is Parati. Same thing, right? It's in our text right now, it's Parati. Then the Titiksha, E is Shraddha, and F is Samadhana. These are qualities. Qualities, you could say that they are values, you could say that they are practice, at the same time. And there are 6 of them. And anytime we talk about Vedanta, we talk about knowledge of the self, Adhikaritvam will show up. It's the first quarter. You could say that the first third of the course will always talk about Adhikaritvam. It will talk about sadhana. It will talk about the fourfold sadhana, which is Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka, Vairagyam. Viveka and Vairagyam. Those are the 2 keywords that you're looking for. One is Viveka, the ability to distinguish, and Vairagyam is the ability to free yourself from the subjectivity of your experience. And then these 6 qualities. Now, each of these qualities will get their own verse, so we will get a chance to talk about them. Yeah, verse number 22 is going to talk specifically about Shama. Then verse number 23 will talk about Dhamma and Uparatike. Yeah, and verse number 24 and 25 will talk about Uparati and Titiksha. And then verse 26 will talk about Shraddha, and verse 27 will, I guess, talk about Samadhana. So we have a lot of studying to do. Okay, so we'll do them one verse at a time next week onwards. We'll try to do Shama and Dhamma together, Uparati and Titiksha together, and Shraddha and Samadhana together. It sort of go together. We can do a Shanti mantra and then we can have a few questions to wrap up. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.